Welcome to our new podcast series, Running in Business, where we have a lot of inspiring interviews with corporate CEOs, international leaders, where we talk about the connection between leadership, motivation, and running. So in our first episode, we have Hans Vestberg, the CEO of Verizon, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And if you like it, subscribe, send it to a friend that you think would get something out of this, and let's just listen to this inspiring conversation with Hans. All right, so today we're joined by Hans Vestberg, CEO and Chairman of Verizon, former CEO of Ericsson, and former Chairman of the Swedish Olympic Committee. He's leading one of the largest telecommunications companies while maintaining his passion for running. Hans, welcome to Running in Life. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Always great to speak about running, and usually I speak about a lot of other things, but it's great to speak about my passions.
And I just talked to Frederick about it. We have I think we have a pretty nice studio that Frederick built up, and then we see you have like a whole team and a big TV studio on your end, and I was like, okay, this is kind of a competition now.
You come out from school, nobody trained you that you're going to spend half of your time on a stage, but that's basically my job, and doing a lot of interviews, public things, speaking, and you never train for it. So of course I have a studio here because I spend the majority of my time actually on the big stage.
Well, we're really, really happy to have you on the stage today. And I wanted, before we go into the running part, Hans, I would like to kind of take us back, because you're also Swedish like us. You've had a really impressive journey from working at Ericsson, finally as the CEO. But I know that you started out doing travel expenses, right? Really downright on the floor. And also that was kind of the connection you had to sports and athletics.
Yeah, no, born in Hudiksvall in the northern part of Sweden, or middle of Sweden. The whole family was in sports. I did soccer and team handball, but team handball, of course, was my big passion. I started when I was 6. My father was my coach when I was 6, so I was 21 when I then went to the higher divisions in Stockholm. So everything around my life was sports. I mean, school wasn't that important, but sport was really important. And I really wanted to make it to the national team, but never was even close. That was the era when Sweden was best in the world in handball. So that was my journey. And at my second year at University of Uppsala, my home team decided for going for achieving going up to the first division, and I was moving back to Hudiksvall for a sabbatical year. And then I asked, actually, they of course would pay me so I could do it, but I wanted to work, so they asked me, where do you want to work? And in Hudiksvall they only had one big company, that was Ericsson. So they put me on checking travel expenses in the mornings at Ericsson. That's where I started, and then I trained handball and played for my home club. And then when I moved back later on to do my last years in university, then I joined Hellas and Stockholmspolisen, which was the best teams in Stockholm by then, and then I started playing with them. But that was how I got into Ericsson, and then I kept that even when I studied my last 2 years. I was working at Ericsson in Stockholm, and I was studying at the same time I was playing in Hellas. So for me it was sort of having a second career was important, even though handball was the number one for me. But somewhere I realized I'm never going to be as good as I wanted.
And what was your your relationship to running? I mean, a lot of people who do sports like handball or soccer, they usually don't like running. It's kind of like a necessary evil for the most part. They just want to throw the ball into the net. But how was your relationship to running at that point?
It was pretty good, because it was the only thing I was beating everybody else on, because I didn't put on that much muscles, and of course I like to be running. So I think it started already there that I like to go out running, and especially trail running. I love to be in the forest. I love to be in the nature running, even though I run way more on concrete these days. So that was the start of it, and then of course Ericsson started sending me around the world, first to China, then to Argentina, then to Chile, then to Brazil, then back to Sweden, then Brazil, and then to US and to Mexico. So, of course, I moved around the world like crazy for a while, and suddenly I realized, okay, I cannot play team handball anymore. I need to exercise. And given how my life turned out, I needed something that I can do by my own. I couldn't rely on a team that's going to get together or something like that. And then running, of course, became something extremely important for me.
I'm interested, Hans. I know that a lot of runners, just like you say it right now, you have pretty hard to like fit it into your schedule, and you need to get out. And there's kind of a big part that's self-leadership, just getting the motivation, the discipline, doing the hard work. What's been like your thoughts on that? I mean, traveling around the world, having a job that's a lot of pressure, a lot of hours, I can assume. How do you keep the motivation and discipline up to just get out there?
No, it's a good question. I try to measure everything I do in order to pressure myself to do it. So I think when I became the CEO of Ericsson in 2009, I decided there were several important things. I mean, I decided that I need to measure myself, how my mood is every day, in order to see that because it goes up and down in jobs like this, and then, you have shit days, you have great days. So of course, I need to see that I stay on the high level, because ultimately I'm motivating hundreds of thousands of people here at Verizon, for example. At the same time, I also, if I don't exercise, it's not going to work for me. So since 2009, I measure every time I exercise. And I would say I'm in between 4 to 6 times a week consistency since 2009. And I measure every time every year I put up a target, how much I want to train. I put myself up for a couple of competitions just to keep that up. But it's a lot about measure yourself and seeing that you have goals that you want to. That's how it works for me. If I would be down to 3 runs a week, I mean, I would feel badly. But now I'm sort of 5.4 times this year so far, which is very important for me. How do I feel in my body, and how can I do my best job? Then I need to exercise.
Well, this is so interesting, Hans. I have a question for you on how you are balancing like the competitive side and just like the well-being and health, like sound mind, sound body type. But before we get into that, I just want to jump back to also how you ended up at Verizon, because I know you've been there for 7 or 8 years now. What do you think they were looking for in the CEO why did they pick you?
Yeah. If I knew. No, I think, first of all, when I left Ericsson, which was just an amazing journey, 28 years, I mean, wow. And I lived in 6, 7 different countries. I worked in every function. It's just the best place you can be. Basically, I came out from that. I said, I'm going to be the chair of the Swedish Olympic Committee. That seemed to be what I should do the rest of my career. But of course, I also had been thinking about, can I really work for a large American company? And there are not many. There are 4 or 5 of them that are technology driven, and Verizon was, of course, one of them. So I think in the beginning it was a lot around 5G and redesigning the network for 5G. Later on, I think my leadership was probably the most important, how I lead the organization and the background I had. And I was a chief technology officer for almost a year, I think, and then I became the CEO and chairman. So I think they looked into that, but I also did what I always do. I wrote my white paper to the board and said, if I get the job, this is what I'm going to do. And if you don't want me to do this, you shouldn't hire me. So they knew what they were hiring. So my white paper was 10 pages on how I would like to change Verizon. And I'm almost done with everything I wanted to do over the period I have been here right now. And now I'm working on my next white paper. That's basically how I work. I always put up targets for myself, but I also want to manage the people around me so they know what I'm going to do. And so I think those were the components that they decided for. So I'm just very humble and, of course, appreciative for getting this chance. I mean, it's few people that have a chance to run the company that turns over $140 billion a year and almost make $1 billion in profit a week. I mean, it's a machine that it's just unparalleled.
It's almost like running in life, but we're not really there yet. We're still working. We have a couple of levels left. Yeah. So we'll get in touch with you, Hans, when we need help with the last part up. But until then, let's keep talking about running. But I'm actually curious because you have a very inspiring leadership style, and I've heard you on a different variety of podcasts talking about leadership, and I'm curious to see what has running and sports and athletics learned you about leadership.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you come to this level, you need to define what you're really good at. I think I'm only good at one thing: leading large organizations. And then you need to decide to bring that out in the best way every day. And that's what I'm trying to do. I measure myself, how I show up. I measure myself, how I exercise, because I know my leadership is going to be better. So the sports have learned me how to measure things and always constantly strive for improvements. I mean, I come in here every morning and I feel that, wow, today I'm finally going to do something good, because you live with that sort of pressure and anxiety all the time. You never feel that I've succeeded, I've done great. You don't feel that. The day I do that, I think I should do something else. So I think that is a learning from sports. You won last week's game, but I have a new game, so it doesn't really matter what happened last week. You just look forward all the time. And that's also how I approach my work. So I would say all my leadership sort of qualities and how I think and how I lead in come from sports. Came from my dad that was following from I was very young to I was almost an adult. And then it comes from all the teams I've been into, which I have learned how to be together with different people with different backgrounds, but also with different qualities, and how can you leverage that. So I think I bring that to how I run my company today. So sports has an enormous impact on me personally and how I shop every day at Verizon.
And I think it's really interesting with the measuring part. I mean, a lot of us runners, we like to measure things. I know that you measure more than most in all the aspects of your life. And I mean, your work, your life, your running. But I'm curious to see, in the planning phase of your running, are you like a guy that, sits on the Sunday eve and like, okay, let's look at next week. How are things, where I'm going to put in my runs? How do you plan to get in these 5.4 workouts every week? Where do you find your small spaces?
Exactly like that. Sunday evening, I basically look in. I would say that a normal day for me is 12 to 14, 30 minutes meetings across the day. And then I need to work myself as well. So the days are full. Even the weekends are very busy here. So I just look for the holes and I make the holes. And as I'm going to run there, I'm going to go to the gym there, I'm going to swim there, whatever I'm going to do. So that I do on Sunday, and then I just see that I have time. But sometimes I have to run from a meeting to get out running and then running back to another meeting. But it makes sense for me because ultimately, I think I'm going to be a better leader. I'm going to run Verizon better if I have that balance and getting that exercise, because people ask me something, are you thinking about business when you're out running? Yeah, I do. I think about it. I haven't solved any word problems when I'm out running, but I think about it. But I think the most important is that I get away from it and I get distance and I come back and I feel also much better, because we all, at least in my life, and I think in many people's life, if you feel good about yourself and everything, you also are actually expressing yourself in a different way and you feel better in environments. And I think that's how it's been for me, and that's why it has been so important. And that's why I plan on Sundays. I mean, today I have between 4 and 5:30, I'm free. So that's when I'm going to run today. I mean, and then 5:30 I have a meeting and a dinner. So that's how I try to plan in order to get things in my exercise.
And how have you adapted your work and life on a daily basis to actually get in the runs? I mean, with equipment and have to shower. Well, I don't know. Maybe it just runs right into the meetings. But
no, I don't do that.
What do you have to adapt to really get in the workouts and the small schedules?
I always have a bag with the training clothes with me wherever I go. It's always
nice.
packed. So wherever I go, I have 2 bags. One is my work bag with my computer, laptop, whatever. And then I have a bag with all my training gear. So I have that ready. And it's pretty packed because it could be different. It could be outdoor, it could be indoor, it could be a gym. So I have that with me all the time. I think that's how you prepare yourself. Then some days I come home with it, I haven't even used it. But for me, it's sort of, the worst thing would be for me that I feel that I had time, but I didn't have the gear. That would be horrible for me. So that's why I always bring it with me. But again, it's a balance. And of course, it's been very different in my, when I became the CEO of Ericsson, my children were 5 and 7 or something like that, or 7 and 9, very young. So I had, of course, see that I have balance being with my family, given how much I travel, how much I worked. But I try to find places where I sort of, I drove my son to his soccer practice. I was running there waiting for him training. That was sort of the way I was doing it. Or I brought my daughter to the handball training. I went out running at Lidingö when she was training. So I was trying to do it at the same time so I didn't miss anything. But it was more complicated before. Now it's a little bit easier. My children are actually working right now, so they're here in New York. So but it's very different.
And take us through a running week for you, Hans. What type of runs do you do during a week? Because you have some sort of plan going in, Sunday evening, looking at the week. How does that look? So
I would try to do 2 to 3 runs outdoor during the week, and they would be everything from 5K to 7K. That's sort of the time I have. Then I would do 1 or maybe 2 interval trainings on treadmill with a class. I do class running. There are 15 other people running on treadmills, but we do interval training. I would do that 1 or twice a week. And then during the weekend, I try to make a longer run. That's sort of how a week would look like. So that would be 4 or 5 runs. Sometimes it's 3, but sometimes a little bit more. But that would be the how I plan. But what I really started the last 5 years is way more interval training in order to get a little bit better running cadence and getting my lungs to stand even tougher running. So yeah, so that's what I do. And usually these interval runs are 45 minutes to an hour on a treadmill, very tough. But for me, that has been good because then you're around other people, you're in the team again. So I really like it.
And how do you do the transition, Hans, from, going from a board meeting, and then hopping on the treadmill, doing an interval workout, and then kind of like a quick shower and back again? So how do you do that? Do you have like a pre-running routine that you never do anything else from, or how does that look?
No, it doesn't. But I've learned over time that, I can have one meeting in the morning, which is a really tough one, where maybe somebody needs to leave the company. And the next meeting is about our new marketing campaign. And the third one is about something else. The only thing I know, whatever I had in the previous meeting, I need to leave and go to the next meeting. The same goes for this. So coming out from a great board meeting or a bad board meeting, running, I don't bring that with me. And then I go to the next meeting after that. I can meet somebody that I want to recruit. And I really need to be in a selling mood. I cannot bring with me what's happening earlier in the day on the 30 minutes meetings I have or whatever. So, and I think that's how I compartmentalize my training as well. That's a new 30 minutes or 1 hour that I'm only focusing on this. I forget what happened. I'm actually not thinking what's going to happen in the next hour neither. So I think that's a way to manage the pressure you sit on and the multiple things you need to do every day, and the amount of people that is actually relying on you for doing a lot of things. So you need to do that. That works for me. Could be very different for different people, but that's how it works for me.
Oh, interesting. And jumping back to what you said before about measuring stuff, I think this is so interesting. I'm just gonna assume that you have I think it's a Garmin watch you have, right? Isn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yes.
So with that measures a lot of stuff, but I know that you also measure stuff I wouldn't say manually, but you have everything from measuring your mood every day to.
Yep.
So where does that come from? I know you touched upon it before on always getting better, but how do you balance the running part of it? Because one part is getting better at the running, like you said, running more intervals. But the other part is, kind of more the, the Zen mode type of running, just, having a good time. How do you balance those two?
It's a great question. I mean, the question is how good mood I'm in when I'm running. It's not like I'm a guy that's running slow and looking around and have a great time. And again, we're all different. I get totally exhausted. I'm actually looking more on my pulse than anything else because I know where my max is. So and I know where my sweet spot is. So for me, it's actually very exhausting to get out running. I mean, I'm tired. I'm trying to do my maximum. I'm trying to improve. I'm getting old right now, but I've always tried to improve my records, my best 1 mile or my best 5K or 10K, whatever. Of course, it's getting harder and harder. I have to agree. But somehow that's sort of in my genes, and I try to improve. So it's not like I'm going out and doing a run and I look at the nature and I feel relaxed. I go out there to really getting better conditions, better and tougher exercise. But that's me, and it's fitting me, and it doesn't necessarily need fit for others. But for me, that's the way I exercise every time I do something.
Where does your drive and your passion come from, Hans? I think it's quite incredible because you have so much energy. Just speaking to you now, I can feel it through the screen, and a lot of passion as well. Where does it come from?
I think that, I don't know, it comes from my childhood. My father always taught me to, first of all, be respectful for all people, but also the drive and never being satisfied. Just try to do better every day. Every day is a new day, you need to do it. And I think I live by that motto, and I've done it since I joined Ericsson, I joined Verizon, and there's no difference for me today than 20 years ago when I was an accountant in Chile. It's the same guy. Of course, I have another title, and I know it. But for me, I try to bring out the best of myself every day because I know how many people relies on me. And I also understand that my decisions impact thousands and hundreds of thousands of people every time I take them. You need to be on your A game all the time. I mean, I need to be it. Of course, I take bad decisions as everyone else, but ultimately it comes down to preparing yourselves with the best conditions around yourself to do the best work. And that's what I'm trying to do, and that's why I have a lot of energy. I love what I'm doing. I've come into the office every day and feel like, wow, this is great. I have a job and I love my job. And I wish that for everybody working here. So I think I try to put myself in all my employees' positions equally much as myself.
I think it's interesting, Hans. I mean, listening to you talk about like time and prioritizing and looking at your schedule. I mean, in the mind of a CEO, what could like a runner learn from a CEO looking at managing their time and focus?
I always, I'm not sure you can learn from it, but I think that limited time sometimes is very precious because you do things more efficiently, you plan way better. Of course, you need your Zen time, as you say, as well. I'm not very much into it, but I think that limited time means also that you're much more concrete. I mean, at office, I usually never have a meeting longer than 30 minutes because if we cannot articulate what I need to decide in 30 minutes, it's probably not prepared rightly. So for me, limited time means that I need to plan better and getting more efficient. That's why I can run because I plan. I mean, I work 7 days a week. I mean, I work all the time, basically. But I can always see that I can get this time here, and I work a little bit more efficient here. Wherever I travel, I mean, I run wherever I travel. So I think the learning is that if you have too much time on your hand, you can say, I can do it tomorrow, I can push it. I don't have that luxury. I mean, I need to do it now, and I need to plan now. And that goes for all the decisions and everything I do in the office as well. I mean, if something's going to be decided 6 months from now, I don't even spend time on it. I mean, but if it's a strategy that is 20 years long, I can spend time on it right now. But if it's a decision making, that I'm trying to be, okay, let's do it here and now.
Yeah. And what do you have other habits, Hans, except the running that you do like on a weekly basis that that kind of boosts your health and your mindset?
Yeah. I have a lot of strange things, I have a lot of spreadsheets that I fill out every week in order to see that I'm staying sane. I measure every hour I work in 6 different categories, and I try to forecast in a quarter in advance, so I see that I spend time on the absolute most important things for the company. There are certain things a CEO of this company can do that nobody else can do because of my title. The worst thing would be if I spending time on things that anybody or other people in my organization can do. I mean, there are certain things, meeting certain shareholders, certain customers, working with the talent management of the company. That's only me that can do it. If I don't spend time on it, nobody will spend time on it. So I measure every hour. I try to do a forecast, and then I follow up every quarter and see how I spent my time. And I've done that since 2009.
And do you do the same thing with your running? Do you have like the same forecasting, looking at how did I do this quarter? Do you have like a review with yourself every quarter on the running part?
I actually, the review is basically real time, because every time I put in the new that I've been out running, then I get, my son has built for me a Excel spreadsheet, so I can see my average that the week, how much I've done running this year, how much is left for compared to the end of the year. So he built that for me, so I can see constantly the real time there. So it's a little bit worse, but yeah, I try to. But for me, that works, and it might not work for everyone, but for me, that has been my way of dealing with pressure, my work, my exercise. So I actually can do all of it and still continue.
Okay, some final questions, Hans. Then we're gonna let you go because we know you have a tight schedule here. Do you have any like goals with your running? You said that I know you're 59. You're going on 60 soon. But do you have any goals like with your running?
I usually put up some goals in the beginning of the year, and I usually put up goals how many running. Not competition, but do runs with other people. Because I like to be around other people. I mean, if it's a 5K, 10K, 10 miles or whatever, sometimes I've been half marathons. I don't do full marathons anymore. But I usually put up how many I'm going to do this year, and actually sort of subscribe to them in the beginning of the year, so I have them laid out on the year. That's usually but it's more for having a 10K coming up 4 weeks from now, and you prepare yourself. So it's more about mentally preparing. It's not any goal to break a record or something. I sort of have passed that.
What's your fondest race memory?
New York Marathon 2016. I have to say that was probably one of the biggest. I was running with my wife. We were running together because that was a deal. But she sprinted the last 100 meters, so I lost her. So I still remember that one. That was really unfair because my body didn't respond because it takes a little bit to run a marathon. Other than that, I think all the runs that I've done in different places. I mean, I usually say running on Copacabana in Brazil, when you see people, thousands of people out running, and you get so much energy just for seeing them. I have to say, running here in New York after the Hudson River, where there's thousands and thousands of people out every day running there, and everybody, some are running fast, slow, all kinds, and you're running there. You get the energy just to see it. So those are some of the favorites.
And our last question for you, Hans. Why do you run? What is the main reason for you?
I think the main reason is to stay healthy, to see that my body is in good fit. Running is, I would say, one of the best exercises you can do for all parts of your body. And that's why I think that running, and then I'm not dependent on anybody else. I can decide when I run. I mean, that dependency is hard sometimes in my life. So I can do it whenever I want, and it's really good exercise. So that's the reason I'm running so much.
Well, Hans, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and it's been so interesting just hearing about you talk about leadership and running. And I mean, hopefully, we'll maybe run a 10K here in Sweden if you're by. Hopefully, you'll be able to come back after this podcast someday.
I hope so. Yeah, that would be something.
Thank you very much, Hans, and hope you get a good run in this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.